To all my amazing viewers, whether you're here for the first time or you've been with us since day one, welcome home. This is a space where voices come alive, stories heal, and every word matters. Here at Vintage Mike Tales, we share powerful narratives that stir the soul, celebrate resilience, and remind us of the beauty in transformation. So settle in, turn up the volume, and let your heart listen. There's something here for everyone, whether you're searching for inspiration, healing, love, or just a reminder that you're not alone. Welcome, and thank you for being part of this journey. You're not just a viewer, you're family now. Viola Davison believed in forever. At 20 years old, she carried the kind of hope that only youth and first love could breed. Wild, unshaken, and loyal to a fault. With warm light brown skin, a heart full of ambition, and a laugh that could melt even the hardest days, she was the kind of woman people rooted for. Her dreams were sharp and clear: break into the tech industry, write software that mattered, and maybe someday lead her own team of innovators. But love, oh love, had a way of reshaping dreams. She met Marcus on campus during her final year of college. He was 5 years older, already out of school but still chasing his big break with a worn-out laptop and a heart full of grand ideas. Tall, smooth-talking, and sharply ambitious, Marcus knew how to make a woman feel seen. With him, Viola felt chosen, special, as if their love had a purpose. He would talk for hours about the startup he planned to build, about disrupting the industry, and how they'd change the world together. He didn't have much then, barely enough to pay rent, but he had charm, hunger, and vision. And Viola, she had belief. They married in a courthouse with borrowed clothes and trembling hands, both too young and too broke to care about anything except the promise they were making. There were no wedding rings, no cake, no cheering family, just the two of them and a quiet vow to build something from nothing. And they did. At least she did. While Marcus chased investors and coded through nights, Viola picked up 3 jobs to keep the lights on. She waited tables during the day, cleaned offices in the evening, and worked overnight shifts at a local grocery store. Her degree sat in a dusty drawer, untouched, because the tech offers never came. Not after she turned down an internship to move in with Marcus. But she never complained. She told herself that sacrifice was love in action, and one day they'd laugh about these days over champagne in their own house. She cooked, cleaned, budgeted, and cheered for him when he wanted to quit. She encouraged him when funding fell through. She paid for his online courses, covered rent when investors ghosted, and even sold her late mother's necklace to help cover the cost of his first business pitch. When Marcus finally landed his first client, he kissed her and said, "We're gonna make it, baby, I promise." And Viola smiled, proud of them both, never asking when her turn would come. She never noticed how the circles under her eyes grew darker, how the weight she gained clung quietly to her figure, or how her voice, once full of laughter and opinions, had softened into something more quiet, more background. But love was enough. It had to be. They lived in a cramped, one-bedroom apartment with noisy neighbors and a leaky faucet that never got fixed. On weekends, they ate instant noodles and watched old movies, curled up on a torn couch pretending they were royalty. And through it all, Viola dreamed not of riches, but of one day hearing him say, "You did this with me." By their 3rd anniversary, Marcus had landed a few steady clients. Viola quit her evening job but still worked. 2 others to make sure bills were paid on time. They celebrated with takeout and a paper crown he got from the dollar store. She wore it all night, laughing like a child. He kissed her forehead and said, "You're the queen behind this kingdom." She believed him, but slowly the warmth began to cool. The late-night talks faded into silent dinners. Marcus, once open and affectionate, grew distant. He spent more time at the office, even when the office was just a shared, co-working space with free coffee. He became impatient with her, annoyed by questions, dismissive of her fatigue. "Why are you always tired?" he asked one night, as she pulled off her shoes after a 12-hour shift. Viola looked at him confused. "Because I'm working." "You know that." "Yeah, but it's not like you're doing real work." "I mean fast food and cleaning." "That's not exactly a career." That was the first time something cracked. She didn't argue. She just went to the bathroom, shut the door, and stared at herself in the mirror. Her once smooth skin looked worn, eyes dimmed. Her soft curves now hardened by weight. She didn't have time to lose. But in her eyes, there was still that same flicker, the one that believed in him, in them. By year 5, Marcus had a growing team, a private office, and a company name people were beginning to recognize. He started dressing better, speaking differently, smoother, cockier. He told her not to bother coming to his networking events. It's mostly industry people. You'd be bored, he said with a shrug. She stayed home and reheated leftovers. When she suggested going back to school or maybe applying to a tech boot camp, he waved it off. You can't handle that now. Besides, we're good. You're better off just helping manage things here. So she did. She organized his calendar, packed his lunch, and stayed invisible. She grew quieter. He grew bolder. But still, she believed. Maybe this was just a phase. Stress, pressure, a growing company. Maybe once things settled, they'd find their way back to late-night movies and dollar store crowns. Then came their 10th anniversary. Viola wore a new dress, simple but elegant, one she saved for months to buy. She had her nails done, put on makeup for the first time in weeks, and even bought a small cake from the bakery Marcus used to love. She lit candles, made his favorite dinner, and waited. He didn't show up. At 10:34 p.m., he walked in, distracted and tired. His phone buzzed non-stop, and he barely looked at the table she'd set. "What's all this?" he asked, glancing at the candles. "Our anniversary," she whispered. "Oh, right, sorry, long day." She tried to smile. "We can still eat." He sat down, barely touching the food. When she cut the cake and handed him a piece, he just looked at it, then at her. "Viola's, we need to talk." She froze. The room went quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. "I'm not happy anymore," he said. "You've changed. You don't look the same. You don't take care of yourself. I feel like I'm living with a stranger. I've outgrown this. Outgrown us." Tears welled in her eyes. "Marcus, I've met someone else," he added coldly. "She's ambitious, fit, driven. Everything I need beside me now." And just like that, 10 years crumbled. He stood up, tossed the uneaten cake slice in the trash, and walked to the bedroom to pack a bag. Viola sat in silence, the candlelight flickering over the wilted dinner she had poured her heart into. When the door shut behind him, she didn't cry, not immediately. She simply looked down at her hands, the same ones that once held him up, and whispered, "I built you, and you buried me." The morning after Marcus walked out, the apartment was hollow. His scent still clung to the sheets. His empty drawers sat open like a wound. Viola moved through the rooms as if sleepwalking, cleaning the untouched dishes, folding a half-packed sweater he left behind, even refilling the toothpaste, forgetting momentarily that he would never come back to use it. 10 years. 10 years of sacrifice, of loving through silence, of dreaming small so he could dream big. And in the end, she wasn't even worth a proper goodbye. The calls from mutual friends started slowly, awkward, cautious, full of pity. "Viola, I had no idea. I thought you two were doing great. I saw him at that launch party last week. With someone else." Each word landed like a slap. But she said nothing, only nodded, thanked them, and hung up. What was there to say? That she gave him everything, and he threw it all away for tighter skin and louder heels? By the end of that week, Marcus had made it public. Social media posts appeared of him with a younger woman, arms around her waist, champagne flutes in hand, his smile wider than she'd seen in years. The captions were cruelly ironic. "Living my best life with the woman who inspires me to grow." Viola couldn't breathe, and still no apology. No message, not even a thank you. The world moved on. Marcus moved on. But Viola was stuck in the wreckage of the life she built. She stayed in the apartment at first, too numb to move, too exhausted to care. Rent reminders started coming, bills piled up. Their joint account, once full, had been emptied. Viola discovered Marcus had closed it before he left. Her name had been quietly removed from everything except the rent and utilities. She pawned her wedding ring to pay for groceries, applied for unemployment, took temp work cleaning homes for people she once sat beside at dinner parties. At night she curled up on the couch, knees tucked to her chest. Clutching the sweater, he forgot like a lifeline. Some days she didn't eat, others she ate too much. It didn't matter. Time was strange now, measured in pain, not hours. One day, as she sat in a cracked plastic chair at the unemployment office, A woman sat next to her, humming quietly. "Long day?" the woman asked. Viola nodded. "You know what my grandmother used to say," the woman continued. "Sometimes the people we water the most leave us the driest." Viola blinked. She didn't even know why the words hit her so hard. She went home that day and cried for the first time. Not just for Marcus, but for herself, for the girl who once had dreams, for the woman who buried them, and for the stranger she saw in the mirror now. The following week, she found work at a fast food joint 3 miles away. It paid minimum wage and the uniform was too tight. But it was something. She worked the late shift, taking orders from customers who barely looked at her, mopping floors that seemed to dirty themselves. Grease clung to her skin. Her back ached every night, but at least it gave her something to do with her hands, besides holding her broken heart. One evening, while restocking the napkin dispensers near the front, she heard a voice behind her. "Viola?" She turned around slowly. There he was, Ethan Walker, her old college friend, tall, blue-eyed, with that same slightly crooked smile she used to tease him about. He wore a tailored jacket and carried a tablet under his arm, as if he'd just walked out of a tech boardroom. For a moment she felt ashamed. The fluorescent lights above made her skin look tired. Her uniform clung in all the wrong places, and her hair was pulled back in a rushed bun. But Ethan didn't seem to see any of that. He stepped closer, smiling. "I almost didn't recognize you." "It's been, what, 10 years?" "Just about," she said softly, forcing a small smile. They sat in a booth during her break, catching up between sips of flat soda. Ethan worked in tech, of course. He'd always been brilliant, but always admitted he only passed algorithms because of Viola's tutoring. Now, he was managing a product team for a software company, expanding internationally. "And you," he asked gently, "what have you been up to?" Viola hesitated. How do you explain 10 years of sacrifice and sudden abandonment in a single sentence? "I took a detour," she said. He watched her carefully, then said, "I still remember your senior project. You built that early prototype AI chatbot that outperformed half the class." She smiled faintly. "That feels like someone else's life." He tilted his head. "I remember thinking you'd run your own tech firm by now." Life had other plans. Ethan paused, then reached for his tablet. "You still love tech?" Viola looked up slowly. "More than anything. But I'm out of touch, out of practice." "I don't believe that for a second," he said. "I still use half the study guides you made back then. Listen, if you're serious, I can help. There's a training program my company runs. You'd qualify easily. It's remote, flexible, and paid." She stared at him, stunned. "Why would you help me?" "Because you helped me once," he said simply, "and because I see someone who's not done yet." Something stirred in her chest. Something she thought was long dead. Hope. That night, Viola walked home under a navy sky, clutching the pamphlet Ethan had printed for her. The wind was gentle. Her feet ached. Her shirt smelled like fryer oil. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel entirely lost. She got home, took a long shower, and stood in front of the mirror. Her body was fuller, softer, but not broken. Her eyes were tired, but still steady. She touched her own cheek, whispering, "I'm still here." And that was enough to start. The first few weeks of training were brutal. Viola had to relearn everything she'd shelved for nearly a decade. Syntax, rules, frameworks, interface logic, all 1 second. Nature now swam before her eyes, like a foreign language. But for the first time in years, she wasn't working to survive. She was working to evolve. She took Ethan's offer seriously, enrolled in the training program, bought a second-hand laptop, studied during every spare minute. After night shifts at the fast food joint, she'd walk home, collapse on her couch, and watch instructional videos until her eyes blurred. She wasn't just learning code, she was rebuilding herself. Each function she debugged, each bug she fixed, was a piece of her pain being rewritten. She was no longer the discarded wife in a grease-stained uniform. She was a builder again, a dreamer. And Ethan, he didn't disappear. He checked in every other day, sometimes just a message, other times a short call. "Don't get discouraged. You're doing great. Remember, imposter syndrome hits hardest when you're closest to leveling up. Viola, you're smarter than half the people on my team already." His words were steady, never overbearing, encouraging without pity. He saw her, not for what she had been through, but for what she still had to offer. And slowly, the weight in her chest began to lift. She started walking to work instead of taking the bus. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to move her body again. Her curves remained, but they started to feel like strength, not shame. She cleaned up her diet. Not to punish herself, but to nourish her. She wore fitted clothes again, found a used mirror at a thrift shop, and placed it by her door. Every morning she looked herself in the eye and whispered, "You're not finished." One day at work, Marcus walked in. He didn't see her at first. She was behind the register, hair tucked under her visor, hands moving through a customer order. He approached the counter, scrolling on his phone, standing beside a woman half Viola's size in a tight designer dress. It wasn't until she handed him the receipt that their eyes met. For a moment, silence. His eyes scanned her, recognition blooming, then discomfort. "Viola," he said, blinking. She gave a polite, empty smile. "That's me. Order 146. Please wait by the side." He stared at her. "What are you doing here?" She looked at him calmly. "Same thing I've always done. Working." The woman beside him tugged his arm. "Come on, babe, I'm starving." Marcus hesitated. You look different." Viola tilted her head. "Yes, I do." And then she turned away. No anger, no tears, no begging. Just quiet, undeniable power. He never looked so small. That moment fueled her for weeks. By month 4, she passed the certification exam and earned a placement as a junior developer at a mid-sized startup. It paid better than all 3 of her old jobs combined. She quit the fast food joint the next day, head high, voice clear. Her supervisor called her in that afternoon. "We don't usually lose people this fast," he said gruffly. Viola simply smiled. "I was never meant to stay." She walked out with her shoulders back and her eyes fixed forward. The tech world welcomed her like a long-lost friend. The transition wasn't easy. Meetings, sprints, deadlines, it was a lot. But Viola was used to working hard. This time, though, her labor built her future, not someone else's. Ethan continued to support her, but now their conversations were filled with laughter, not pity. He called her after her first week on the job. "So, how was it?" "I almost cried twice," she admitted. "From stress or joy? Both." He laughed. "That's the real tech experience." They started meeting for coffee on Saturdays. Their old rhythm returning, but richer now, matured by time and pain. Sometimes they talked about code, sometimes about life. Sometimes they just sat in silence, sipping coffee under the late afternoon sun. And Viola smiled often. One evening, walking home from one of those coffee dates, she passed a boutique window and paused. The reflection staring back at her was stunning. Her body, still full and soft, held itself differently now. Her hair framed her face with natural elegance. Her skin glowed. She was still Viola, but no longer the version that bent and broke for others. She walked into the boutique and bought the dress in the window, deep burgundy, with sleeves that kissed her wrists and a neckline that dared the world to look her in the eye. She wore it the following weekend to a tech mixer Ethan invited her to. She wasn't sure if it was a date, but she didn't care. She wasn't there for anyone's approval anymore. As she entered the rooftop venue, the city lights glittering behind her, she felt eyes turn. Whispers, glances, admiration. Ethan spotted her. From across the room, his eyes widened. "Wow," he said when she reached him. "You look like myself," she finished softly. They smiled. That night they talked for hours, about projects, about pain, about how sometimes the best revenge is simply reclaiming the life that was stolen from you. "I've been thinking about starting something of my own," she confessed. Ethan leaned in. "When you do, I want in." Viola laughed. "Not if." "No, because I know you, Viola Davison. You don't stay down, you rise." As the wind rustled around them, she realized something else. She wasn't just healing. She was becoming unstoppable. Viola Davison no longer cried when she passed mirrors. She paused, studied her reflection, and smiled, not because she saw perfection, but because she finally saw herself. It had been nearly a year since she'd started her tech journey, and the woman she was now bore little resemblance to the one who used to wait silently for Marcus to come home, apologizing for taking up space. Viola now walked into rooms like she belonged, spoke like she was heard. and loved herself with the same ferocity she once gave away too easily. She had traded in her fast food uniform for power suits, client meetings and innovation huddles, but what changed the most wasn't the salary or the respect, or the rising LinkedIn endorsements. It was her ownership of her life. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was thriving. Her mornings began with intention, coffee brewed just the way she liked it, soft R&B in the background, a walk around her block before logging in for the day. She had moved into a modest but beautiful condo in the city. Sunlight, wood floors, peace. On weekends, she attended brunches with fellow women in tech. Brilliant. Ambitious, driven women who exchanged more than just industry tips. They exchanged sisterhood. Ethan remained in her life, steadily, gently. They still shared Saturday coffees, but those moments had taken on a different energy now. There was a warmth between them, a comfort. Sometimes they lingered after the coffee ran dry. Sometimes their hands brushed and didn't move away. But Ethan never rushed it. "I'm here when you're ready," he once told her, watching her sip from her cup with a faraway look in her eyes. "I think I'm learning what that even means," she had said. One evening, as Viola stared at the ceiling in her condo, the idea hit her like lightning, an app, one that supported women restarting their careers after long gaps, a platform that merged learning, mentorship, and real job opportunities with flexibility and dignity. She stayed up all night sketching wireframes, mapping user journeys, scribbling down everything she wished she had when she was at her lowest. She named it Phoenix Path because that's what she had done, what so many women had done, risen from ashes others left behind. By morning, her hands were shaking with excitement. She called Ethan first. "I'm building something," she said breathlessly. "I'll cancel my meetings," he replied. "Tell me everything." They met at a co-working space, whiteboards, laptops, energy humming between them. The idea was raw, but it was real. Ethan connected her to a small group of investors who loved the vision. One meeting turned into five. Five turned into offers. Offers turned into development. She hired women who had left the workforce due to motherhood, illness, divorce, or burnout. She gave them flexible hours, fair wages, and full respect. Phoenix Path went live 6 months later, and within a year it was everywhere. Tech blogs covered it. Women posted testimonials about how it changed their lives. Viola received messages from across the country. "I thought I was too old to start again. You showed me I wasn't. You reminded me I'm still capable. Thank you for building what no one else thought we needed." Viola cried reading each one, but not from sadness, from recognition. Then came the call she didn't expect. Her lawyer said, "You have an opportunity to acquire full ownership of an independent tech company currently facing liquidity issues, quiet buyout. No competition." She blinked. "What company?" He hesitated, then said, "Marcus Caldwell Technologies." Her heart stopped. His company, the one she'd built with sweat and sacrifice, the one he'd thrown her away to protect. Viola said nothing for a long moment. "Make the offer," she finally said. It went through quietly, efficiently, legally airtight. Marcus didn't even know who bought him out until it was done. 1 month later, she visited the office, her office now. She walked through the glass doors wearing a tailored black dress and red heels, confident, calm, a queen returning to a throne. She never should have been denied. Marcus looked up from his desk and froze. He looked smaller, older, hunched by disappointment and ego. His face paled. "Viola," she stepped inside and smiled. With grace that cut deeper than anger ever could. "Mr. Caldwell," she said smoothly, "I'm here to finalize transition documents." He stood, stunned. You bought the company?" "I did." He blinked, as if trying to rewrite the moment. "Why?" She tilted her head. "Because I could." Silence stretched between them. "You did all this for revenge?" he asked. Viola laughed, not cruelly but kindly, the way someone might laugh at a child who misunderstood the rules of the world. "No, Marcus. I did all this for me. I built this life to prove to myself that I was always more than what you couldn't see." He swallowed hard, looking away. "You look incredible." "I'm incredible," she said. "I always was." She handed him the final folder. "I don't want your company." "Not really. I want your legacy to serve something greater than your ego ever could." And with that she left. The click of her heels echoed down the hallway, like a final verse in a song long overdue. Later that night, Viola met Ethan on the rooftop of her building. The city lights glowed beneath them. Her body leaned into his without hesitation this time. "I did it," she said. He smiled. "You did, not for revenge. For rebirth, I know." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Ethan gently took her hand. "No rush, but when you're ready, I'd like to build something with you. Not a company, a life." Viola didn't answer right away. She turned to face him, eyes soft, heart full, and whispered, "I think I already started." The world saw a mogul. The headlines praised her brilliance. The industry whispered her name like a secret, too sharp to speak aloud. But Viola Davison, she remained calm. There were no victory parades, no social media jabs, no interviews where she dragged Marcus's name through the mud. The woman who had once been mocked, discarded, and underestimated chose silence, not as surrender but as power. Because real power doesn't shout. It stands still and watches everything else tremble. After acquiring Marcus Caldwell Technologies, Viola didn't dismantle the company. She studied it, reorganized it, removed the toxic leadership, restructured the culture, and gave promotions to the silent, overlooked workers who had held the place together for years. She turned it from a broken, ego-driven firm into a values-led extension of Phoenix Path. When Marcus's former board members asked to meet her, they came with half apologies and unsure expressions. One of them said he never saw this coming, adding that she had built a legacy. Viola smiled and replied that she was always building it. She had just stopped asking for permission. Under her direction, the company's stock began to rise again, faster than it had under Marcus. Industry reviews changed their tone. Innovative, inclusive, strategic, visionary. Her face appeared in business magazines, not for her scandal, but for her solutions. Marcus, on the other hand, began to disappear. News surfaced of failed partnerships, closed doors, and debts he hadn't anticipated. The same people who had praised him turned away, and the same women he paraded grew bored of his bitterness. 1 year after Viola took ownership, Marcus sat in the back of a community entrepreneurship panel, where she was the keynote speaker. He wore a baseball cap, tried to stay unnoticed, but Viola saw him. She didn't flinch. She didn't call him out. She simply stood before a crowd of young dreamers and told her story, not the sob version, but the blueprint version. She said she was once the woman who believed that love meant self-erasure, but she had learned that your light is not meant to be dimmed for someone else's shine, that you can support your partner and still be your own person, that you can sacrifice without being sacrificed. The audience broke into quiet applause. Viola looked down at her notes, then glanced up again and said, she used to think that being discarded meant she wasn't enough. But she wasn't discarded, she was redirected. And what she had built now, it wasn't revenge. It was rebirth. In the back, Marcus sank lower into his seat. Afterward, he approached her behind the stage, hesitantly, telling her she had always been smarter than him. Viola looked at him and replied no, she had always been more faithful than him. That was the difference. He nodded slowly, swallowing his shame, and told her she was glowing. She answered, I'm at peace. He opened his mouth again, but Viola stopped him and said there was nothing left to say. She didn't hate him. She had just outgrown the cage he tried to keep her in, and with that she turned and walked away, not in anger, not in pain, but in freedom. At home that night, Viola curled up on the couch beside Ethan. Their relationship had deepened with quiet grace. No grand declarations, just trust, affection, and daily tenderness. He kissed the side of her forehead as she rested against him and asked if she ever thought about what life might have looked like if things had gone differently. Viola considered it, then said no, because if things hadn't fallen apart, she never would have found herself. He nodded, gently running his fingers through her curls, and said he was glad she did. She looked at him, her eyes soft and full, and said she thought she was finally ready. When he asked for what, she replied, for us. Ethan didn't reply. He just smiled and held her closer. A few weeks later, they eloped. No big ceremony. No white dress, just the ocean, bare feet in sand, and two hearts choosing peace over performance. Viola wore a flowing blue gown, her natural hair catching the wind. Ethan said his vows with mist in his eyes, and she whispered hers like poetry. After the ceremony, they danced barefoot under the moonlight. Later that year, Viola found out she was pregnant. She cried, not out of fear, but joy, because this time, her child would be born into a home filled with love built on mutual respect, not dependency or imbalance. She named her daughter Nova, Latin for new star, because that's what Viola had become, a guiding light for others. A story of survival, strength, and rebirth. Sunlight poured into the nursery, bathing the room in a soft golden glow. Viola sat in a rocking chair, her newborn daughter tucked against her chest, breathing softly in rhythmic peace. Nova, new star, new beginning. Viola looked down at her baby and marveled, not just at her daughter's tiny fingers and gentle heartbeat, but at the moment itself, the stillness, the joy, the feeling of enoughness. She had spent so many years running on empty, chasing validation, pouring herself into people who didn't know how to hold her, but now every part of her life was held with purpose. She had love. She had peace. She had herself. Motherhood felt different this time. It wasn't another act of sacrifice, it was an expansion. She wasn't losing herself in this child. She was multiplying. Ethan came in quietly, a mug of tea in one hand, and leaned down to kiss her forehead. He said she was so peaceful. Viola smiled and said she got that from him. He shook his head and told her, "No, she gets her strength from you." They sat in silence for a while, just watching Nova sleep. Viola's heart swelled with something she couldn't even name. It wasn't pride. It wasn't even triumph. It was completion. She had broken a cycle. She had rewritten her story. 6 months later, Viola returned to work, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Phoenix Path had grown into a global initiative. Thousands of women had gone through its platform. Partnerships were now forming with universities, nonprofits, and Fortune 500 companies. Viola had become not just a founder, but a movement. She was invited to speak on panels, deliver keynotes, and consult with top-tier tech firms, but she never let it get to her head. She always remembered the fast food counter, the sleepless nights, the lonely showers where she'd once wondered if her life was over. Now she hired women who looked just like she did, women with stretch marks, gaps in their resumes, and fire in their eyes. During one mentorship event, a young woman nervously approached her and said she saw her TED Talk last year. She quoted her, "Don't be ashamed of how long it took you to bloom. Flowers open when the sun finds them," and told her it saved her life. Viola smiled gently, holding the woman's hand, and said, "The sun will always find you. You just have to stay rooted." That quote went viral the next day, but Viola didn't bask in it. She closed her phone and went to take her daughter for a walk in the park. Because life was more than algorithms and applause. It was moments. Small, perfect human moments. One afternoon, Viola received a letter in the mail. It was from Marcus. He had remarried, divorced again, was in therapy now. The letter wasn't bitter or manipulative. It was simply honest. He wrote that he knew he didn't see her clearly when he had the chance, that he broke something beautiful, but also that he now understood it wasn't his to keep. She was always too big for the box he tried to force her into, and maybe that's what needed to happen for the world to see who she really was. He ended with, "I'm sorry, I'm grateful, I'm proud," from afar. Viola read the letter in her garden, surrounded by blooms she planted with her own hands. Then she folded it, placed it in a box with old photos, and set it on a high shelf in the closet, not out of hatred, but because the past no longer needed to sit at the center of her life. That evening, Ethan surprised her with dinner on the rooftop. Candles, soft jazz, her favorite dishes. He told her she worked so hard, but tonight was just about her. No tech talk, no mom mode. Just Viola. She laughed and said she'd missed her. As they ate, the sky shifted into dusk. Stars began to blink above them, and for a long moment, she sat still and let the world wrap around her. Ethan pulled out a small gift box. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet engraved with 2 words, "Still Rising." He told her he knew she didn't need symbols, but this felt right. Viola slipped it onto her wrist, heart warm. She leaned in close, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me, even before I saw myself again." Later that night, as she tucked Nova into bed, Viola whispered stories of strength and softness, of mistakes and second chances, of choosing yourself when the world forgets you. And when she looked in the mirror one last time before sleep, she didn't check her weight, She didn't scan for flaws. She didn't brace for criticism. She simply looked herself in the eye and said, "You made it, not to perfection, not to revenge, but to peace. The life she had deserved all along." To my amazing subscribers and future friends, thank you for being here. Your support means the world to me. Whether you've been on this journey from the beginning, or you're just discovering vintage Mike tales, I'm deeply grateful for your presence. If today's story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need a little spark of hope, a reminder that it's never too late to heal, to grow, or to begin again. Here at Vintage Mike Tales, we're creating more than stories. We're building a space for resilience, self-love, and the power of transformation. I hope every voice you hear here gives you the courage to take that first step toward recovery and reinvention. Let's keep shining, one story at a time, with gratitude. Vintage Mike Tales.